You were designed by the Creator with the divine capacity to attract, to influence, and to transform the lives of others. But somewhere along the way, society convinced you that you were ordinary, that you had to earn attention, that charisma was something people are born with. That's a lie. You were not put on this earth to be confused about who you are. Confusion kills confidence. And without confidence, you cannot command attention. The moment you begin to walk in clarity, true, unshakable identity clarity, is the moment you begin to attract the right people, the right resources, and the right momentum into your life. Clarity is magnetic. People are drawn to those who know where they're going, who they are, and why they exist. The world is filled with noise. Everyone is shouting for attention, trying to be heard, trying to be seen. But the ones who stand out are not the loudest, they are the most certain. They radiate identity. You can sense it when they enter the room. You can feel it when they speak. You can see it in their eyes. There's no hesitation, no performance, no apology, just presence. And that presence is powerful. When you know who you are, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop editing your personality to match the crowd. You start showing up as the full, undiluted version of yourself. That kind of self-awareness and confidence is rare. And what's rare becomes valuable. It gets noticed. It gets respected. It gets followed. Clarity is not about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's not shouting, "Look at me." It's silently declaring, "This is who I am, and I'm not moving." That stillness in identity is louder than the noise of performance. That kind of inner strength doesn't need to compete. It doesn't hustle for validation. It just is. And that isness attracts everything that's meant for you. Most people are repelling the very things they want because they're unclear about who they are. You cannot attract what you do not embody. You can't ask the world to see you if you haven't yet seen yourself. You can't expect others to follow your lead if you're still following opinions, trends, and fear. The more you dilute your identity, the weaker your presence becomes. The key to becoming magnetic is not fixing your outside, it's anchoring your inside. People are not looking for perfection, they're looking for truth. And when you know your truth and you walk in it unapologetically, people lean in. They want to be close to someone who knows who they are because that energy is grounding. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel inspired. Clarity is not just what you know, it's what you embody. You can't fake identity. You can pretend for a little while, but people can feel the gap between performance and presence, and they will respond accordingly. But when your words, your energy, and your actions are in alignment with who you are, you become undeniable. You become unforgettable. You become a force. Many people are trying to be liked, and in the process, they're losing themselves. But when you're clear, you don't need to be liked to feel valuable. You don't change your shape to fit every space. You walk in as yourself and let the room adjust. You stop chasing opportunities and start choosing them. That shift from chasing to choosing only happens when you know your worth. Clarity of identity creates boundaries. It tells the world what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you refuse to entertain. It gives you the strength to say no without guilt and yes without fear. It filters your relationships. It purifies your circle. It removes distractions, and as a result, it increases your power. You move with less noise, less baggage, and more focus. When you are clear on who you are, you no longer need everyone to understand you. You no longer fear rejection. Rejection doesn't hurt when it doesn't belong to your destiny. And clearly helps you discern that. It teaches you that not everyone is supposed to go with you. Not everyone deserves access to you. And that's not arrogance, it's stewardship. Clarity silences insecurity. It kills comparison. When you know who you are, you stop measuring yourself against who someone else is. You realize there is no competition for your calling. You don't look left or right. You look inward and upward. You anchor yourself in truth, and from that truth you move with grace and certainty, and people notice that. There is a frequency that confidence carries, and it's only found in identity clarity. It's not loud, but it's commanding. It's not boastful, but it's undeniable. People trust you more when you trust yourself. People follow you more when you're willing to lead yourself. And that kind of leadership starts with the internal decision to stop being confused about your worth. The world has taught us to chase titles, labels, and external validation. But true identity has nothing to do with what's on the outside. It's about the fire on the inside. The calling, the voice, the purpose that refuses to be silenced. When you align your life with that voice, your energy shifts. You begin to live from conviction, not convenience. And that shift draws others in. You become a light in a dark world when you walk in identity clarity, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. The world is starving for real, for people who aren't pretending, for people who aren't performing, for people who are rooted, not reactive. That kind of clarity is rare, and that's why it's so powerful. Clarity requires discipline. It requires saying no to what doesn't align. It requires breaking free from people-pleasing. It requires choosing your voice over their opinion. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because the moment you get clear, you stop operating from survival and you start operating from strategy, from purpose, from power. When you're unclear, you hesitate. You second guess. You miss opportunities because you're too busy wondering if you belong. But when you're clear, you move with speed. You recognize what's yours. You seize it without apology. You stop asking for permission and start walking in authority. People aren't following your style, they're following your substance. And substance only grows when identity is rooted. You can wear all the right clothes, say all the right things, and still fail to attract the right people if you're not being the right person. Identity clarity sharpens you, it refines you, and in doing so, it makes you magnetic. Your clarity gives others permission to find their own. When you walk in the fullness of who you are, you light a path for others to do the same. You stop being a mirror reflecting insecurity and start being a lighthouse radiating truth. And people can't help but be drawn to that light. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. Every scroll, every post, every curated highlight reel screams for approval. People are conditioned to believe that if they can just look perfect, sound perfect, or perform perfectly, then they'll finally be worthy of attention. But here's the truth. Perfection might impress people for a moment, but purpose moves them forever. It's not the shine that sticks, it's the substance. Purpose is what gives your presence weight. It's what makes people stop, listen, and lean in. Perfection is fragile. It's a performance that requires constant upkeep. One mistake, one flaw, one crack in the image, and it all comes crashing down. But purpose is different. Purpose is stable. It's built on something deeper than applause. It doesn't break under pressure. It grows stronger. And when you live with purpose, you don't have to pretend. You just be. And that authenticity is far more powerful than any illusion of flawlessness. People are not looking for someone who has it all together. They're looking for someone who knows why they're here. Someone who's anchored in something bigger than image or ego. Someone whose life is guided by meaning, not metrics. You can look perfect and still feel empty. But when you live with purpose, even your imperfections begin to speak because they're wrapped in intention. They become testimonies, not weaknesses. When you lead with purpose, you shift from performance to presence. You no longer feel the need to control every detail or cover every scar. You understand that your story, including the messy, raw, and vulnerable parts, is what gives your message power. It's what connects you to people. It's what gives you credibility. People don't need you to be flawless. They need you to be real. And purpose allows you to be real with confidence. Out of perfection isolates. It creates distance. People look at a perfect image and think, I could never be that. But purpose builds bridges. It says, if I can overcome, so can you. It invites people in. It draws them close. Because it doesn't point to self-glory. It points to something greater, something meaningful, something worth following. When your actions are rooted in purpose, they carry weight beyond the surface. Your words hit differently. Your presence feels different. You don't walk into a room trying to prove something. You walk in as something. And people respond to that. They can feel it. They may not even be able to explain it, but they sense it. Purpose has a frequency. And when you're tuned in, the right people pick it up. Living in purpose means you stop striving and start serving. You stop trying to be admired and start being impactful. And that shift changes everything. People are not magnetized by your accolades. They're moved by your mission. When you live to impress, you become a mirror reflecting what others expect. But when you live with purpose, you become a light shining a path others want to follow. You don't need to be the most polished person in the room. You need to be the most present person in the room. And presence is born from knowing why you're there in the first place. Purpose gives your yes power. It gives your no clarity. It keeps you from being swayed by every trend and distracted by every opinion. It grounds you. And grounded people are attractive because they feel trustworthy. The pursuit of perfection is a race with no finish line. It will exhaust you, discourage you, and disconnect you from your true self. But the pursuit of purpose is energizing. It pulls you forward. It aligns your gifts, your voice, your influence, and your time with something that matters. And people can feel that alignment. It gives you momentum. It gives you magnetism. Some of the most impactful people in history were deeply flawed, but they were deeply purposeful. They didn't need to be perfect to change lives. They just needed to be committed. Purpose gave them permission to keep going even when they failed, and in the process, their courage, not their perfection, made them unforgettable. When you walk in purpose, you stop needing to explain yourself. Your life becomes the explanation. Your consistency, your character, your conviction, they do the talking. You don't beg for opportunities. You become the opportunity. You don't seek validation. You become a vessel. And people can't help but be drawn to that kind of authenticity. And there's something disarming about a person who's comfortable being seen, flaws and all. They're not posturing, they're not hiding, they're standing fully in their story. And that makes them powerful. That kind of confidence is contagious. It gives others permission to show up as themselves. And that, more than any filtered image, leaves a lasting impact. Perfection seeks to impress the crowd. Purpose seeks to impact the one. And in doing so, it ends up moving the many. You don't have to be flashy to be effective. You just need to be faithful to the assignment. When you're faithful to what you're called to do, you radiate a sense of certainty that no external approval can give you. Purpose draws people because it feels safe. It feels focused. It feels real. In a world full of copycats, people are hungry for something original. And your purpose is the most original part of you. It's the blueprint heaven gave you to walk out on earth. No one else can do it the way you can. No one else can carry it the way you can. And when you own that truth, it becomes your superpower. People don't follow perfection, they follow passion. They follow conviction. They follow someone who is willing to show up every day and do the work regardless of who's watching. That's the beauty of purpose. It doesn't wait for the spotlight. It shows up in the shadows. It keeps building, keeps sowing, keeps serving, and over time it begins to shine brighter than any fake perfection ever could. There will always be someone more polished than you, more eloquent, more impressive on paper. But purpose doesn't care about paper. It cares about power. The power to transform lives. The power to stand firm in the storm. The power to say, this is why I'm here. And let that truth shape every move you make. That kind of intentional living is magnetic. You don't need a perfect track record to be impactful. You need a reason, a cause, a mission. When your life is wrapped in purpose, people are drawn to the clarity it produces. They want to be around it. They want to be part of it. Because deep down, we're all searching for more than just success. We're searching for meaning. And when people see it in you, they move toward it. Authentic communication is not about having the perfect words. It's about having a pure intention. It's not about sounding rehearsed or polished. It's about being present, real, and fully engaged. People don't remember every word you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And when your communication comes from a place of truth and transparency, it creates a space where connection is not only possible, it becomes inevitable. Most people are speaking to be heard, but few are communicating to be understood. There's a difference. Authentic communication is not just talking. It's transmitting energy, emotion, and empathy. It's listening with your heart, not just your ears. It's paying attention not only to words, but to what's being said in the silence. That depth of awareness is rare. And because it's rare, it's powerful. You can't fake real. You can script your sentences, memorize your pitch, and still fail to connect. Why? Because authenticity carries a frequency. It's not heard, it's felt. People feel when you're speaking from your soul. They feel when your words are aligned with your values. They feel when your motive is pure. And that feeling builds trust instantly. We live in a culture that celebrates image over integrity. But image can be manipulated. Connection cannot. Authentic communication breaks through the noise. It pierces through the walls people have built. It opens doors logic can't. It disarms defensiveness and invites openness. That's because truth, when delivered with love, has the power to reach places performance never will. Being authentic doesn't mean saying everything on your mind. It means saying what's true with wisdom, humility, and clarity. It's not about being raw just to be raw. It's about being intentional with your honesty. People respect vulnerability when it's anchored in strength. When they can tell you're not bleeding on them, but showing them your scars to prove healing is possible. Some of the most transformative conversations don't happen when we're trying to teach. They happen when we're simply telling the truth. Truth about our journey, our fears, our lessons, our growth. It's hard to hate someone whose story you understand. That's why authentic communication builds bridges. It turns strangers into allies and moments into memories. When you speak with authenticity, your tone carries weight. Your silence speaks volumes. Your presence commands attention, not because you demand it, but because you deserve it. There's a congruence between who you are and how you show up, and that congruence is magnetic. It makes people feel safe. It makes them feel seen. You don't have to use fancy words to move people. You have to use honest ones. Words that reflect your experience. Words that carry conviction. Words that come from a place of service, not ego. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and that care is communicated through tone, timing, and truth. Authentic communication requires courage. It means risking being misunderstood. It means letting go of control. But in that risk lies the reward of real connection. When you stop trying to sound perfect and start showing up present, you create a space for others to do the same, and in that space, healing, growth, and transformation happen. Listening is just as important as speaking when it comes to authenticity. True connection doesn't come from dominating a conversation. It comes from entering a dialogue, from asking, not just answering, from receiving, not just giving. When people feel heard, they open up. When they open up, they trust. And where there's trust, there's influence. There's a subtle confidence that comes with being authentic. You don't need to over-explain or overcompensate. You just show up fully and freely. And people can sense when you're not trying to convince them of anything. You're simply sharing what's true for you. That truth becomes the invitation for them to discover what's true for them. Authentic communicators speak with alignment. What they say matches what they believe. Their gestures, tone, and body language all speak the same language. This unity creates coherence, and coherence is clarity. And clarity builds confidence, not just in you, but in the people listening to you. They start to believe in themselves because your authenticity gives them permission to. Real communication takes practice. It means unlearning performance habits. It means slowing down to connect. It means paying attention to how your words land. It means taking responsibility for the energy you bring into every interaction. When you value connection over control, you start to communicate in ways that touch hearts, not just minds. People crave depth in a shallow world. They are tired of surface level conversations, tired of being talked at instead of spoken with. When you meet someone who looks them in the eye, who pauses long enough to listen, who responds instead of reacts, they remember that. They feel that, and they trust it because it's rare, and rarity is respected. Authentic communication doesn't always mean agreement. It means honesty with honor. It's possible to disagree and still connect. It's possible to challenge someone and still love them. In fact, some of the most profound connections are born from courageous conversations where truth was spoken and respect was preserved. You don't need to be a master speaker to be an authentic communicator. You just need to be fully yourself. Consistent, clear, compassionate. When your inner world matches your outer voice, you create harmony. That harmony resonates with people. It makes them want to lean in, not walk away. It makes them want to partner, not compete. There is something sacred about being truly heard. In a world that moves fast, where distractions are constant, authentic communication feels like a gift. It slows down time. It creates a pause that allows for reflection, recognition, and restoration. And those moments of connection leave an imprint far deeper than any script ever could. Authentic communication isn't about being impressive. It's about being impactful. It's the difference between speaking to someone and speaking into them. It's not about volume. It's about value. When you show up with a message that's true to who you are and rooted in love for the person in front of you, that message will always find its mark. Chasing people is rooted in the belief that your value must be proven, earned, or justified. It's a mindset that says, I need to convince you to see me. But that mindset is backwards. You were not created to beg for attention or pursue people who don't see your worth. You were created to stand in such clarity of purpose that the right people find you because your presence speaks before you do. When you're chasing, you're operating from lack. There's a desperation that seeps through your energy, even if your words sound confident. You can't fake alignment. When you're trying too hard to be noticed, the people you're trying to impress can feel it. But when you're anchored in purpose, you shift the dynamic. You stop asking for permission to be seen and start living in a way that demands to be noticed, not out of pride, but out of alignment. Purpose is magnetic. It's the inner fire that gives your life a direction, a message, a mission. And when people encounter someone who's living on purpose, they take notice. They're drawn not just to what you do, but to why you do it. They can feel that you're not out here trying to impress anyone. You're here to impact someone. That's a different energy entirely. You attract people not by chasing them down, but by becoming someone worth following. When your life is rooted in something bigger than popularity or approval, your influence begins to expand without force. You don't need to manipulate outcomes or relationships. You simply show up consistently in who you are and what you're called to do, and the right people aligned with that frequency. Chasing is exhausting because it forces you to constantly adapt your identity to fit someone else's expectations. Attraction, on the other hand, allows you to stay planted in authenticity. You're no longer auditioning for acceptance, you're embodying purpose. And when you embody purpose, you become a solution in a world full of noise. People don't follow noise, they follow clarity. When you live on purpose, you move differently. You stop comparing because you're not trying to compete. You're called, you're focused, you're in your lane. And that kind of focus is attractive because it's rare. Most people are drifting, but purpose makes you deliberate. People respect deliberateness. They want to connect with someone who knows where they're going and why. Think about the people who've influenced your life the most. They didn't beg for your attention. They didn't try to be everything to everyone. They simply lived with such conviction that their presence inspired something inside of you. That's the power of attraction through purpose. It's not about getting people to like you. It's about giving people something to believe in. Your purpose speaks louder than your words. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you treat others, how you navigate adversity. People notice when you're not just talking about something, you're living it. That integrity builds trust, and trust is the foundation of true connection. You don't need to pursue people when you're already positioned to receive the ones meant for your path. The problem with chasing is that it places your identity in someone else's hands. It makes your value contingent on their recognition. But when you understand your purpose, your value becomes non-negotiable. It's not up for debate. You're no longer asking, am I enough? You're declaring, this is who I am. And people respond to that level of certainty. Attraction begins with clarity. When you know who you are and what you're here to do, you stop sending mixed signals to the world. You become aligned in thought, speech, and action. And that alignment creates momentum. The more you move in your purpose, the more doors open. Not because you forced them open, but because you walked in the authority of your assignment. There's nothing wrong with wanting connection, but chasing creates anxiety, while attracting creates alignment. When you're living on purpose, you're no longer trying to force relationships that don't fit. You trust the timing, you trust the process, you trust that the right people will be drawn to what's real, not what's rehearsed. And that kind of trust creates peace. When you're in pursuit of people, you often end up losing yourself. You water down your voice, you shrink your vision, you compromise your values. But when you pursue purpose, the right people find you and respect you because you didn't lower your standards to gain their proximity. You elevated your life and invited them into something bigger than both of you. Your job is not to chase people. It's to become the fullest, clearest, boldest version of who you were created to be. That version of you will naturally attract the resources, relationships, and opportunities that align with your calling. You don't need to push your way in. You need to prepare your space. Purpose prepares a place for what's meant for you. Purpose doesn't scream, it speaks with authority. It doesn't manipulate, it magnetizes. When you move with intention, your energy changes. You become unbothered by rejection. You become uninterested in approval. You become unavailable for anything that distracts from your mission. That level of focus draws people who are ready, not just curious. Sometimes the reason people don't come closer is because you're chasing them away with neediness. But when you stop chasing and start cultivating, everything changes. You cultivate your gift. You cultivate your mindset. You cultivate your character. And from that place of inner strength, you begin to attract others who are drawn to what you carry, not just what you say. Your attraction through purpose is not passive, it's intentional. It's about showing up daily with discipline, vision, and grace. It's about doing the inner work so your outer world reflects your highest calling. It's not about shortcuts, it's about stewardship. Because when you steward your purpose well, people can't help but be drawn to what you represent. The right people will recognize the sound of purpose when they hear it. They'll feel the clarity in your voice. They'll see the evidence in your life. They'll know they're not just connecting with a person, they're connecting with a mission. And that kind of connection doesn't need to be chased. It's chosen. Purpose attracts what performance can't sustain. Belief is not just a mindset, it is a force. It is the unseen foundation upon which everything visible in your life is built. Before people believe in you, before they follow your vision or respond to your message, you must first carry that belief yourself. Influence begins in the invisible. It starts with an internal conviction that is so strong, so grounded, so unwavering, that it begins to shape the way you speak, the way you move, the way you lead, and the way others respond to you. When you believe deeply in something, whether it's your purpose, your calling, your message, your mission, that belief starts to permeate your words. It gives your voice weight. It gives your tone authority. You're not just saying something, you know it to be true. And people can feel that even if they don't understand everything you say, they respond to the certainty behind it. Belief communicates in a language louder than words. It speaks through posture, energy, and presence. There's a difference between knowledge and belief. You can have knowledge and still hesitate. You can have information and still second guess yourself. But when belief kicks in, hesitation fades. Belief brings boldness. It makes you step into rooms you once thought you weren't ready for. It makes you speak with clarity when before you were unsure. And that kind of boldness commands attention, not because it's arrogant, but because it's rooted. Influence is not given to the loudest person in the room. It gravitates toward the most convicted. People follow certainty. They follow someone who knows where they're going. And you cannot lead people anywhere you haven't first led yourself. Belief is what keeps you going when results haven't shown up yet. It's what drives you to continue when no one else sees what you see. That inner knowing is what eventually draws others to trust you. In a world full of skepticism and doubt, belief stands out. People are hungry for something solid, something steady, something real. When they see someone who is unapologetically grounded in their truth, they are magnetized to that energy. It's not that they're looking for someone who has all the answers. They're looking for someone who actually believes what they say. That integrity of belief is rare, and rarity attracts. Belief is not about hype. It's not about pretending to be confident. It's about being deeply anchored in something beyond circumstances. When you truly believe in your value, your voice, and your vision, you stop being shaken by rejection or delays. You stop being swayed by the opinions of others. Your belief becomes your compass. It leads you, it directs you. And that clarity inspires others to find their own direction. People don't buy into ideas, they buy into the confidence behind those ideas. They want to know that you've done the work, not just on your product or message, but on yourself. They want to feel your belief before they ever commit to your offer. And when your belief is authentic, it will bypass resistance, it will disarm doubt, because conviction is contagious. You don't have to be the most talented, the most charismatic, or the most experienced, but if you're the most believing, if you carry the deepest level of conviction, you will lead, you will influence, you will move hearts and shift minds. Because belief activates something spiritual. It opens up the unseen realm of possibilities and invites others to imagine what's possible for them too. Belief creates momentum. The more you believe, the more you act. The more you act, the more results you see. And the more results you see, the more your belief grows. That cycle builds confidence, and that confidence creates credibility. People trust those who believe in what they're doing, not because it's perfect, but because it's proven through consistent action. You can't fake belief for long. Eventually, the cracks will show. Eventually, pressure will test what's really underneath your words. But when your belief is real, pressure doesn't break you, it reveals your depth. The storms don't silence you, they amplify your voice. The challenges don't disqualify you, they qualify you to lead others through their own. And that resilience is what creates lasting influence. Belief is the birthplace of vision. You can't cast a compelling vision for others if you haven't first seen it clearly for yourself. You must see it, feel it, and own it long before anyone else does. Vision, fueled by belief, becomes irresistible. It becomes a movement. It draws people not just to a goal, but to a cause. That kind of influence outlives trends, outlasts hype, and outshines competition. Can't lead others beyond the level of belief you carry. If your belief is small, your influence will be limited. But if your belief is expansive, your leadership will be limitless. Because people aren't looking for more information, they're looking for transformation. And transformation begins with belief. When you believe something is possible, you create space for others to believe it's possible too. The strength of your belief sets the tone for your environment. It influences your team, your audience, your clients, your community. Belief creates culture. It shapes how people feel in your presence. It tells them what's allowed, what's expected, and what's possible. When you carry belief, people don't just listen to you, they align with you. Belief must be built intentionally. It doesn't come from wishful thinking. It comes from repeated decisions. From showing up every day even when you don't feel like it. From acting on what you know, not waiting to feel ready. That kind of daily discipline forms the bedrock of powerful belief. And over time, that belief becomes visible through your consistency, credibility, and courage. Belief influences how you show up in conversations, in relationships, in opportunities. It affects your tone, your posture, your energy. When you believe in your voice, you speak up. When you believe in your purpose, you take action. When you believe in your future, you persevere. Every move you make is either fueled by belief or limited by doubt. Belief attracts believers. When you stand in certainty, you become a lighthouse for those still searching. You draw in people who resonate with your mission. You build communities, movements, and legacies, not because you were the most skilled, but because you had the audacity to believe first. That belief set everything else in motion. There's a power that comes from someone who is fully convinced. It doesn't mean they're arrogant or closed off. It means they're aligned. And that alignment radiates. It compels others to trust, to follow, to invest. Belief turns words into influence, intentions into actions, and ideas into impact. It's the seed from which everything else grows. You were never designed to fade into the background. There's nothing accidental about your existence, nothing random about your wiring, and nothing ordinary about your presence. The fact that you are here now with the experiences you've lived through, the voice you carry, and the vision planted inside of you, none of that is invisible. It's intentional. Even when people overlook you, underestimate you, or ignore you, it doesn't reduce your impact. It only delays their awareness of what is already certain. The world may try to label you, box you in, or silence your voice, but purpose doesn't disappear just because people don't recognize it. You are not waiting to be made valid by external applause. Your value was spoken into you before anyone else had a chance to define you. What's inevitable about you is not loud or boastful. It's rooted, it's patient, it's building even when no one is watching. You are not here to beg for recognition. You are here to fulfill a calling, and calling doesn't ask for permission to exist. There's a divine rhythm to your unfolding. Sometimes you're hidden, not because you're invisible, but because you're being prepared. Sometimes it feels like no one sees you, no one hears you, no one acknowledges what you're building. But purpose doesn't need the crowd to begin. purpose needs obedience, not visibility. And when you walk in obedience to what you know you're meant to do, your moment will meet you. Not by accident, not by luck, by design. You are the result of something bigger than you. You are the product of prayers, sacrifices, experiences, and breakthroughs. You are the answer to a problem someone hasn't even discovered yet. That's why you can't quit. That's why you can't hide. That's why you can't diminish your presence just because people don't see it yet. Inevitable things don't need validation. They need time. There's power in knowing that your moment is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When you realize that, your posture changes. You stop trying to convince people of your worth. You stop measuring your progress against someone else's timeline. You stop shrinking in the face of indifference. You start walking like someone who knows that what's inside of them will not be denied. What's inevitable cannot be erased. It might be resisted, it might be delayed, it might even be mocked, but it cannot be stopped. The kind of influence you carry isn't about trends, it's about truth. It's not based on algorithms, it's based on assignment. You were set apart to do something specific, and no amount of being overlooked can change the outcome of what's been appointed for you. When you know you're inevitable, you stop playing small. You stop waiting for the right moment and realize you are the moment. You carry the solution, you carry the shift, you carry the spark. So instead of waiting to be invited, you build your own table. Instead of trying to fit into rooms that don't honor your calling, you create new spaces where your presence makes sense. Being overlooked is not the same as being irrelevant. Just because people haven't recognized you yet doesn't mean your impact isn't real. Some of the most powerful shifts happen in silence. Some of the deepest roots are formed underground. What you're growing in obscurity is preparing you for visibility. And when your time comes, the weight you've built in private will sustain you in public. There's a confidence that comes when you realize that your story, your scars, your setbacks, all of it is working together to produce something that can't be replicated. Your unique path isn't a liability, it's your advantage. You're not invisible, you're in process. You're becoming. And anything in the process of becoming is on its way to being revealed. People may have counted you out, but they didn't have the full equation. They didn't see the endurance you developed. They didn't see the nights you kept going when no one was watching. They didn't see the faith it took to keep building when you had no evidence. But that's exactly why your breakthrough will hit different, because it won't be luck, it'll be legacy. There is a difference between noise and impact. Noise gets attention for a moment. Impact leaves a mark for a generation. You were not made for temporary applause. You were made for lasting influence. And lasting influence doesn't show up overnight. It's the result of relentless consistency, of holding on to your identity when it would be easier to imitate someone else, of choosing to stay planted when the ground feels dry. You are inevitable because what you carry cannot be outsourced. No one else has your fingerprint. No one else can speak with your voice. No one else can touch the people you're called to reach in the exact way you can. That's not arrogance. That's assignment. And when you live with the awareness of your assignment, you begin to walk differently. You stop asking, do I matter? And you start declaring, I am necessary. Every setback you've endured, every delay you've experienced, every closed door you've faced, they were not detours. They were sharpening grounds. They didn't take away your value. They deepened your capacity. You were being built to last, not to impress. And what's built to last doesn't have to scream for attention. It simply stands. And in standing, it shifts atmospheres. You're not invisible. You've just been developing in silence. There's a difference between being hidden and being absent. You're not absent, you're being established. You're being prepared for a weight that can't be carried lightly. You're being trusted with depth with insight, with resilience. And all of that is part of what makes you inevitable, because when you do show up, you'll show up with something real. You don't have to prove yourself when you're walking in inevitability. You don't have to beg people to notice you. You don't have to compete for attention. When you carry something undeniable, it announces itself. The right people, the right opportunities, and the right seasons respond to what you carry, not because you forced it, but because you are faithful. You've been called, equipped, and positioned. You've been refined in places others didn't even know you went through. That kind of internal transformation makes you unstoppable. Not because you never feel fear, but because you no longer let fear define your next step. When you know you're inevitable, fear becomes fuel. Doubt becomes a doorway. Resistance becomes your reminder that you're moving in power. The idea of being invisible is rooted in the lie that you're not enough. But the truth is, you've always been more than enough. It's not about who notices you. It's about who you were created to be. You don't need to be seen by everyone. You only need to be seen by the ones you're assigned to impact. And when the time is right, you won't have to announce yourself. Your becoming will speak louder than any introduction.